I should have known something was wrong when my wife of 15 years suggested we live a little before we die. What kind of phrasing is that? But there I was, grinning like an idiot, while she handed me a glossy brochure filled with activities that would later turn out to be my carefully orchestrated murder itinerary. Surprise, honey, I've booked us an extreme adventure weekend for our anniversary. Claire's smile was dazzling, her eyes sparkling with what I mistook for excitement rather than calculation. 3 days, 3 adventures, sailing on Friday, skydiving on Saturday, and rock climbing on Sunday. Let me tell you something about marriage. You think you know someone after sharing a bed for 15 years. You think you can detect the subtle shifts in their behavior, the microscopic tells that signal deception. But sometimes the truth hides in plain sight, like the fact that your loving wife has been plotting your accidental death for the insurance money. My name is James Morgan, 45 years old, moderately successful investment banker, and apparently worth significantly more dead than alive, at least according to my $5 million life insurance policy with its generous accidental death clause. The same policy Claire had insisted we upgrade last year for our financial security. I should have questioned the sudden interest in extreme sports from a woman whose idea of physical exertion was trying new yoga poses. I should have wondered about the mysterious weekend retreats that had become increasingly frequent. I should have paid attention when she started taking calls in another room, her voice dropping to whispers. But I didn't, because the changes weren't just suspicious, they were also incredibly flattering to a man in the early stages of a midlife crisis. Claire had always been beautiful, but lately she'd become insatiable. New lingerie appeared in our bedroom routine. Spontaneous afternoon encounters when I came home for lunch. The kind of passionate attention that makes a man feel 20 years younger and far too distracted to notice red flags waving frantically in his face. "You've awakened something in me," she'd whisper, her fingernails tracing dangerous paths down my chest. "I want us to really live before we die." Again with the death references. Subtle, Claire. Really subtle. The sailing trip was scheduled for a small bay known for its unpredictable weather patterns, something I might have researched if I hadn't been so pathetically grateful for my wife's renewed interest in our marriage. We arrived at the marina on a deceptively perfect Friday morning. Clear skies, gentle breeze, moderate temperatures. Nature apparently hadn't received the memo about its role in my demise. "You're going to love Captain Roy," Claire said as we approached, a weathered sailboat that had clearly seen better decades. "He comes highly recommended." Captain Roy, as it turned out, was a man in his 60s with sun-damaged skin and a flask that was never far from reach, even at 9 in the morning. His bloodshot eyes did a poor job of conveying maritime competence. "Beautiful day for sailing," he slurred slightly, helping us aboard a vessel that should have been retired during the Clinton administration. "Your wife says you're looking for some excitement." She certainly had been specific in her requirements. We set sail, leaving the harbor and entering open water. For a while, it was genuinely magical. Sun on our faces, wind in our hair, Claire pressing against me as I took the wheel. She'd even packed a gourmet picnic lunch, my favorite sandwiches, expensive cheese, champagne, the perfect last meal. In retrospect, it was during this idyllic moment that Captain Roy announced we were far enough out to try some real sailing. He handed me a life jacket that looked like it had been manufactured when Reagan was president. "This doesn't look very reliable," I observed, noting the frayed straps. "It'll do the job," Claire assured me, helping me into it. I noticed her own jacket looked considerably newer. The first sign of trouble came 15 minutes later. The weather shifted with alarming speed, dark clouds rolling in, wind picking up, gentle waves transforming into threatening swells. Almost as if someone had consulted meteorological forecasts to pinpoint the optimal time for a tragic accident. "We should head back," I suggested, eyeing the rapidly deteriorating conditions. "Nonsense," Captain Roy replied, taking another swig from his flask. "This is just getting interesting." Claire's eyes were bright with anticipation. This is what we came for, James. The thrill. The storm hit with unexpected ferocity. Captain Roy's experience seemed proportional to his sobriety, minimal and decreasing by the minute. Water crashed over the sides, soaking us completely. The yacht pitched violently, sending unsecured items flying. That's when I heard it, a sickening crack from above. Looking up, I watched as the main boom swung freely, its securing line mysteriously snapped, or cut. Before I could react, it swept across the deck, catching me squarely in the chest and launching me overboard. The shock of the cold water momentarily stunned me. When I surfaced, gasping, the yacht was already several yards away. I tried to shout, but another wave crashed over me, filling my mouth with salt water. The life jacket, that ancient, decrepit thing, was already waterlogged, providing minimal buoyancy. Through the spray and rain, I could see Claire on the deck. Was she reaching for something to throw to me? A line? A life preserver? No, she was just watching. Even from a distance, I could see her expression wasn't one of panic or desperation. She was smiling. The realization hit harder than the boom that had knocked me overboard. This wasn't an accident. My wife was standing there, making no move to help as I fought for my life in the churning sea. It was Captain Roy who finally threw me a line after what felt like an eternity. My arms were leaden, my strength nearly gone, but somehow I managed to grab hold. As they pulled me back aboard, I caught Claire's expression changing from something like disappointment to performed concern. James. Oh my God, I was so scared, she cried, wrapping a blanket around my shivering body. Captain Roy couldn't turn around quickly enough in these conditions. I said nothing, too cold, too shocked by what I'd seen, or thought I'd seen. Had I imagined that smile? Was my oxygen-deprived brain playing tricks on me? That night, as Claire drew me a hot bath and massaged my sore muscles before leading me to bed for consolation sex that bordered on the gymnastic, one question burned in my mind. What exactly had she planned for tomorrow? How's my brave survivor? Feeling today? Claire asked brightly the next morning, placing coffee on my nightstand. Ready for the sky? Skydiving. The second activity on our extreme weekend itinerary. I'd always had a moderate fear of heights, something Claire well knew. Yet somehow in the light of day, my suspicions seemed absurd, paranoid. Absolutely, I said, taking a sip of the perfectly prepared coffee. Nothing like a brush with death. To make you appreciate life, right? Something flickered in her eyes. Surprise? Respect? Before she leaned down to kiss me. That's exactly the attitude I was hoping for. We arrived at Blue Sky Diving Center shortly after lunch. Our instructor, Brad, was a muscular ex-military type with a shaved head and disconcertingly casual attitude toward human mortality. First time, huh? He asked, leading us to a room filled with equipment. Don't worry. Statistically, you're more likely to die driving to our facility than jumping with us. Claire laughed a little too enthusiastically at this observation. As we suited up, I noticed Claire in deep conversation with Brad near the equipment locker. They spoke in hushed tones with occasional glances in my direction. When I approached, they immediately separated, all smiles and professionalism. Your wife was just telling me about your sailing adventure yesterday, Brad said, helping me into my harness. Sounds like you've got a guardian angel watching over you. Guardian angel? More like the angel of death. We boarded the small plane with 4 other jumpers. As we ascended, Claire held my hand, her palm surprisingly cool despite the warm cabin. I'm so proud of you for doing this, she said, especially after yesterday. At 12,000 feet, Brad secured himself to my back, double-checking our connections. I watched as his colleague did the same for Claire, noting the meticulous attention both instructors paid to the harness systems. The jump door opened, sending a blast of cold air into the cabin. Claire and her instructor were positioned to jump before us. At the doorway she turned to me, mouthing what looked like, "I love you," before tipping backward into nothingness. Then it was our turn. Brad shouted final instructions as we poised at the threshold between safety and freefall. I took a deep breath and felt the push. Nothing can prepare you for that initial moment of freefall. The brutal wind, the deafening roar, the stomach dropping, sensation of plummeting toward Earth at terminal velocity. For the first few seconds, sheer terror overwhelmed all other thoughts. Then, as Brad had promised during training, a strange serenity took over. We stabilized, arms and legs spread in the classic skydiving position. The Earth below was a patchwork, quilt of fields and neighborhoods, approaching with frightening speed. Brad tapped my shoulder, indicating it was time to pull the ripcord. I reached for it, giving it the firm tug as instructed. Nothing happened. I tried again, yanking harder. Still nothing. The ground continued rushing toward us at alarming speed. Brad's body language changed instantly from relaxed to urgent. I felt him reaching around me for the emergency chute release. Seconds ticked by. Precious, life-determining seconds. Finally, a violent jerk as the reserve parachute deployed. Instead of the promised gentle deceleration, we continued falling at a concerning rate. Looking up, I could see the chute had only partially opened, several lines tangled. Brad worked frantically behind me, trying to manipulate the lines to create enough drag. The ground was no longer a distant patchwork but a rapidly approaching reality. In those moments, as death seemed increasingly probable, my mind achieved a strange clarity. Yesterday's sailing incident, today's parachute failure, the hushed conversation between Claire and Brad, the life insurance policy Claire had insisted we upgrade. This was no coincidence, no streak of bad luck. My wife was systematically trying to kill me. Brad managed to create enough control to steer us away from the concrete parking lot toward a softer landing in an adjacent field. We hit the ground hard, much harder than intended, but the impact was just shy of catastrophic. I felt something in my ankle give way, pain shooting up my leg as we tumbled through the grass. When we finally stopped rolling, Brad was already shouting for medical assistance. Through the commotion, I spotted Claire landing gracefully several 100 yards away, her descent picture perfect. As paramedics loaded me into an ambulance with what turned out to be a broken ankle, Claire rushed to my side, face masked with concern. "Oh my God, James, they said there was a malfunction!" Her hands fluttered over me. "This is all my fault. I should never have planned this weekend." "Just bad luck," I said carefully. "Equipment failures 2 days in a row." Something hardened, briefly in her expression before melting back into wifely concern. "I'm canceling tomorrow's rock climbing. This is too much." "No," I said, reaching for her hand, squeezing it perhaps a bit harder than necessary. "Let's finish what we started. 3 adventures, like you planned." Surprise registered on her face, quickly replaced by uncertainty. "But your ankle is just a minor fracture according to the paramedic. They'll give me a walking boot. I can still climb." I maintained eye contact, challenging her. "Unless there's some reason you don't want to continue?" For a moment, I thought I saw panic behind her eyes. Then she smiled, leaning down to kiss my forehead. "If you're sure you're up for it, then of course we'll go." The emergency room visit confirmed a simple fracture requiring only a walking boot. Claire hovered attentively throughout, the perfect concerned spouse. On the drive home, she called the rock climbing facility, confirming our reservation despite my injury. "They assured me there are routes suitable even with your limitation," she told me, squeezing my knee. "But we can still cancel if you change your mind." "I'm looking forward to it," I replied, covering her hand with mine, feeling like we were actors in some bizarre play. Back home, Claire prepared dinner, my favorite pasta dish, and opened an expensive bottle of wine. As we ate, she reminisced about our early days together, recounting stories from our courtship with nostalgic precision. "Remember that weekend in Napa when we got lost trying to find that vineyard?" she asked, refilling my wine glass. "How we ended up at that little family winery instead?" I nodded, playing along. "You said it was the happiest accident of our relationship." Her smile faltered slightly. "We've had a good run, haven't we, James?" The past tense wasn't lost on me. 15 years next month. "Do you ever wonder what your life would have been like if you'd married someone else?" she asked, her voice casual but her eyes watchful. I took a sip of wine, buying time. No, I made my choice. For better or worse, remember. Till death do us part, she added softly. The air between us felt charged, dangerous. Both of us aware that something fundamental had shifted, though neither acknowledging it openly. After dinner, I declined her offer of a bath, citing fatigue. In our bedroom, I positioned myself with a clear view of the door while pretending to read, not willing to turn my back on her. Claire emerged from the bathroom in black lingerie I'd never seen before, transparent in strategic places, accentuating every curve of her body. Under different circumstances, the sight would have been irresistible. "You're tense," she observed, sliding into bed beside me. "Let me help you relax." Despite everything I suspected, my body responded to her touch. She moved over me, straddling my hips, careful of my injured ankle. "I want to remember everything about you," she whispered, leaning down to kiss me deeply. Every inch, every taste. It was like making love to a beautiful stranger, someone who looked like my wife, sounded like her, but who had become fundamentally unknowable. As we moved together in the familiar rhythm of longtime lovers, I watched her face above mine, wondering when she had changed. Or had she always been this person, and I'd been too blind to see? Afterward, when her breathing evened into sleep, I carefully extracted myself from her embrace. I retrieved her phone from the nightstand where it charged. Her previous code no longer worked. 3 failed attempts, and I risked locking the phone completely, alerting her to my suspicions. Instead, I turned to her laptop, which she'd left open on the dining room table. Her browser history had been recently cleared, but her email was still logged in. I scrolled through her inbox, finding nothing immediately suspicious until I checked her archived messages. There it was, a folder labeled simply Michael. Inside were hundreds of exchanges dating back nearly a year. Opening the most recent, I felt my world collapse entirely. "Everything's arranged for this weekend. Captain Roy understands what needs to happen. Equipment failure, sudden storm, all plausibly deniable. If that fails, Brad knows about the parachute issue. And Sunday's climbing guide is my college friend, so I'm not worried there. 3 chances should be enough, but if somehow he survives all 3, we'll have to get more creative. Once the insurance pays out, $5 with the accidental death rider, we're free. New identities ready as discussed. Meet me in Bali on the 20th, as planned. I can't wait to start our real life together. All my love, C. Michael." The personal trainer she'd started seeing last year for her fitness journey, the one I'd generously paid for as a birthday gift to her. Continuing to search, I found older emails revealing a relationship that had apparently begun during her first wellness retreat, photos they'd exchanged, plans they'd been making, and, most damning, a detailed discussion of various methods to arrange my accident. My wife of 15 years hadn't just fallen out of love with me. She and her lover had spent months planning my murder for financial gain. Every adventure this weekend had been carefully orchestrated to appear as tragic misadventure. I was still staring at the screen, numb with shock, when I heard the floor creak behind me. "Couldn't sleep?" Claire's voice was neutral, carefully modulated. Closed the laptop slowly, not bothering to hide what I'd been doing. "Had some things on my mind." "Anything you want to talk about?" She moved into my field of vision, wearing only my dress shirt, her legs bare. I looked at this woman I had loved, trusted, built a life with, and saw a complete stranger. "Just wondering what you have planned for tomorrow's climbing accident. Something involving faulty equipment again? Seems to be a theme." For a moment she maintained the facade, confusion furrowing her brow. Then, seeing my expression, she dropped the act entirely. Her posture changed, the loving sleepiness replaced by alert calculation. "How much do you know?" she asked simply. "Enough. Michael seems very thorough in his planning. Bali sounds nice this time of year." She nodded slowly, processing this new development. "I'm actually impressed you figured it out. I didn't think you were paying that much attention." To my wife trying. To kill me? Yeah. Tends to focus the mind wonderfully. Claire leaned against the wall, studying me with clinical detachment. What happens now, James? You call the police? With what evidence? Some emails that could be fictional role play? 2. Accidents that were just that, accidents? 3 planned accidents seems like a pattern the insurance company might find interesting. She smiled, the expression chilling in its genuine amusement. You'd void the policy. Cut off your nose to spite your face? Better than letting you profit from my death. We could come to an arrangement, she suggested, moving closer. A divorce? Clean. Simple. I laughed harshly. So you can try again later when I'm not expecting it. I don't think so. Then what's your play here? She gestured to the space between us. Mexican standoff until one of us blinks? I stood, wincing slightly as my injured ankle protested. Go to bed, Claire. We have rock climbing tomorrow. Wouldn't want to miss our last adventure. Confusion flickered across her face, quickly replaced by wariness. You still want to go? Absolutely, I assured her. I'm dying to see what you have planned. Dawn arrived with the artificial cheerfulness of Claire preparing breakfast as if nothing had changed. She'd dressed in form-fitting climbing gear, her hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. Coffee? She offered, sliding a mug across the counter. Accepted it, but didn't drink. Who's Michael? I asked bluntly. She didn't flinch at the name. My personal trainer. Well, originally. Things evolved. A year ago. 11 months, but who's counting? She took a sip of coffee, watching me over the rim. You know what's ironic? I didn't even consider this path until your insurance review. Last year. You're the one who insisted on increasing the coverage. For our retirement, I said quietly. And the family we talked about starting. Something like genuine regret flickered across her face. I would have made a terrible mother. But you make an excellent attempted murderer. 2 failures notwithstanding, she shrugged elegantly. Statistically, I'm due for success. We finished breakfast in tense silence. When it was time to leave, I insisted on driving rather than taking her car. The climbing facility was located an hour outside the city. Claire had booked us with a private instructor, undoubtedly the college friend mentioned in her emails. Mark greeted us with professional enthusiasm, eyebrows raising slightly at my walking boot before exchanging a significant glance with, Claire, we can adjust for your injury, he assured me. There's a moderate route that won't put too much strain on that ankle. He's very determined to complete all 3 activities, Claire added, her tone conveying more than her words. Mark nodded almost imperceptibly. Safety first, but we'll make it work. The next hour was surreal, receiving climbing instructions from a man I was increasingly certain had been paid to ensure I wouldn't survive the experience. I watched every piece of equipment he selected with newly paranoid attention. Testing. Knots myself, examining carabiners for signs of tampering. Ladies first? Mark suggested when we reached the cliff face. Claire shook her head. No, let James go ahead. I want to watch his technique. Of course she did. Whatever accident they had planned would be easier to execute if I was already on the cliff. Mark secured my harness, double-checking the connections with what appeared to be appropriate professional care. I began climbing, feeling the strain in my good leg as I compensated for the injured ankle. About halfway up, I paused on a small ledge to look back down. Claire and Mark were engaged in quiet conversation, heads close together. Their body language suggested urgency, perhaps disagreement. Claire gestured emphatically, while Mark shook, his head glancing up toward me. Taking a deep breath, I continued upward. Whatever they had planned would likely happen either near the top or during my descent. The higher I went, the more completely my safety depended on the rope, the anchors, and Mark's attentiveness below. 3/4 of the way up, I encountered a difficult passage requiring a stretch that put pressure on my injured ankle. As I navigated it, I felt a subtle change in the tension of the rope. Looking down, I saw Mark adjusting something on the belay device. My heartbeat accelerated, was This it? I clung to the rock face, suddenly reluctant to trust any part of the safety system. "You're doing great, James," Claire called up. "Just a few more moves to the top." I hesitated, analyzing my options. Continue up, facing whatever trap awaited. Descend now, perhaps triggering their backup plan. Or take a third option they wouldn't expect. Decision made, I deliberately shifted my weight, letting my injured ankle give way dramatically. With a convincing shout of pain, I released my handholds, falling backward into space. If the system was rigged to fail, this would force their hand. A planned accident would have to happen now, reactively rather than according to their carefully timed script. I fell about 10 feet before the rope caught, jerking me to a stop with appropriate tension. Mark had responded correctly, the belay system functioning as designed. "James!" Claire's cry contained what sounded like genuine concern. "Are you okay?" Ankle gave out. I called down. "I think I'm done for today." Mark began lowering me slowly, the descent controlled and safe. When my feet touched ground, Claire rushed forward, supporting me as I pretended to struggle with my balance. "That was terrifying to watch," she said, her hands checking me for injuries. "I think we should call it a day." Mark looked uncertain, exchanging another glance with Claire. "We could try an easier route if you're up for it." "No," Claire said, firmly. "This was a mistake. We're pushing too hard after yesterday's incidents." As we returned our gear, I watched their interactions closely. Something had changed in their dynamic, a tension that hadn't been there before. Had I disrupted their plan by falling early? Or was the accident supposed to happen somewhere else? In the parking lot, Claire reached for the car keys. "Let me drive. You should rest that ankle." "I'm fine," I insisted, maintaining my grip on the keys. "The boot stabilizes it well enough." The drive back was surreal. Two people who had once vowed to love each other forever, now locked in a deadly chess match with no clear endgame. "I did love you once," she said suddenly, breaking the heavy silence. "Completely, totally, the kind of love you read about in books." "What changed?" "You became predictable, safe, boring." She turned to look at me. "Until this weekend. I never saw this side of you coming. The survivor, the detective. It's almost attractive." "Sorry I didn't show more homicidal tendencies earlier in our marriage," I replied dryly. "Might have kept things exciting." She actually laughed, a genuine sound I hadn't heard in months. "Where has that man been hiding?" Under layers of misplaced trust, apparently. We pulled into our driveway, the home we'd shared for most of our marriage. Inside, Claire poured 2 generous glasses of bourbon, then raised hers in a mock toast. To failed plans and new beginnings? I didn't drink. "What exactly are you proposing here, Claire?" She sank onto the sofa, suddenly looking exhausted. Ceasefire. A negotiated peace." "You tried to kill me 3 times. Peace isn't exactly on the table." "What are your options?" she asked practically. "Go to the police? With what evidence? Some emails that could be explained as fiction? Adventure sport accidents that thousands experience yearly?" She wasn't wrong. I had suspicions, circumstantial evidence at best. Nothing concrete enough for criminal charges. "So what's your suggestion?" I asked, finally taking a sip of the bourbon. Divorce. Quiet. Uncontested. I get a reasonable settlement, say 40% of our assets. I sign an agreement never to contact you again. You sign one agreeing not to make any unseemly accusations. And Michael? Is my concern, not yours." She crossed her legs, shifting into business mode. "We sell the house, divide the proceeds. No alimony, clean break." Just like that. We pretend the last 3 days never happened? Not pretend, she corrected. Strategically ignore, for mutual benefit. I studied her face. This woman I had once known better than myself, now revealed as a complete stranger. "And I'm supposed to trust that you won't try again? That some dark night 6 months from now I won't find you standing over my bed with a knife?" She smiled thinly. The insurance policy is void if we're divorced. You're worth nothing to me dead. At that point. The bourbon in my glass caught the afternoon light, amber liquid glowing like something alive. I swirled it, watching the way it clung to the sides of the crystal. I need time to think, I said finally. Don't take too long. She stood, smoothing her climbing pants. I'll be staying at a hotel tonight, for both our peace of mind. After she left, I systematically went through the house, checking for anything dangerous or suspicious. I called my brother, asking him to check in with me every few hours. Then I locked every door and window and tried to process the insanity of my new reality. Around midnight, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. She won't stop, you know. She never does. I stared at the message, adrenaline surging. Who is this? I typed back. Someone who knows what she's capable of. Check her previous marriage records. Ask about David. David? The name meant nothing to me. I tried calling the number, but it went straight to voicemail. Sleep became elusive. I spent the remainder of the night researching, first trying to identify my mysterious texter, then diving into Claire's past. David Harlow, her first husband. I'd known Claire had been briefly married before me, a college relationship that had ended with his tragic death in a hiking accident. A normal, unremarkable story, except it wasn't. David Harlow had died in a fall while they were vacationing in Colorado. His death had been ruled accidental. The grieving widow had received a substantial insurance payout. History repeating itself, or attempting to. By morning, I had compiled enough information to feel sick. Not proof exactly, but a pattern too consistent to ignore. When my phone rang at 9 a.m., I wasn't surprised to see it was Claire. Have you thought about my offer? She asked without preamble. I have a counterproposal, I replied. Tell me about David Harlow. The silence that followed told me everything. When she finally spoke, her voice had lost its confident edge. Who have you been talking to? Does it matter? The pattern is pretty clear, Claire. Or should I call you? Catherine? Another silence, longer this time. What do you want? A real divorce. You walk away with nothing. You sign a confession about your plans this weekend, which my lawyer will hold in escrow. If anything happens to me, anything at all, it goes straight to the police. You're blackmailing me. I'm ensuring my continued existence, I corrected. A concept I've become rather attached to recently. After hanging up, I immediately called my lawyer and hired a private security firm. Then I reached out to the unknown texter again. Thank you. Information confirmed. Can we meet? Hours passed before a reply came. Tomorrow, noon, Riverfront Park. Come alone. The next day, I spotted her before she saw me. A slender woman in her early 30s, dark hair pulled back, sunglasses obscuring her eyes. You're David Harlow's sister, I said as I approached. She nodded, removing her sunglasses. Sarah, and you're her next victim. Or would have been. We sat on a bench, watching families stroll by, normal life continuing around us. I've been tracking her for 7 years, Sarah said, after the police dismissed my concerns about my brother's death as the ravings of a grieving sister who couldn't accept an accident. But you knew better. I knew my brother, an experienced hiker who suddenly ignores basic safety protocols? It never made sense. She turned to face me directly. Did you know she changed her name after his death? Catherine Blackwood became Claire Morgan before she met you. I nodded slowly, along with the insurance payout. And now she has a new identity ready. She's efficient, Sarah said grimly. I've tried warning her targets before. The others wouldn't listen. Others? My blood went cold. You're her third husband, Mr. Morgan. There was a fiancé between my brother and you. Rock climbing accident, didn't survive. I couldn't prove anything, but the pattern is unmistakable. I stared at her, processing this new horror. A black widow. I've been married to a serial killer. Sarah handed me a USB drive. Everything I've gathered over the years, circumstantial but taken together, compelling. Enough to keep her away from you at least. Or enough to ensure she never hurts anyone else again. 1 month later, I stood in the courtroom as Claire, or Catherine, as the prosecutor now correctly called her, was denied bail pending her trial for multiple counts of attempted murder and 2 counts of first-degree murder. The evidence against her had been overwhelming once authorities knew where to look. Witness testimony from Captain Roy, who'd confessed to his role in the sailing accident. Forensic analysis of the parachute equipment showing deliberate tampering. Mark's complete confession in exchange for immunity. Most damning were the encrypted messages recovered from a second phone found in Claire's hotel room. Detailed communications with Michael about their previous projects and contingency plans if this weekend's attempts failed. As they led her away in handcuffs, Claire caught my eye across the courtroom. For a moment, I saw a flicker of the woman I thought I'd married, beautiful, vibrant, full of life. Then her mask slipped back, into place, revealing the cold calculation beneath. Outside, reporters clamored for a statement from the husband who had uncovered the serial Black Widow's deadly pattern. Instead, I simply walked away, Sarah Harlow beside me, both of us carrying the weight of justice finally served. "What will you do now?" she asked as we escaped the media frenzy. I considered the question. The past month had changed me irrevocably. Shattered my trust, rewritten my history, altered my future. "Live," I said simply. "Actually live. No extreme adventures required."